Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So this week's Audit Tuesday will focus on the CDK global ransomware attack that greatly affected the U.S. car dealership industry. So this is with over 15,000 dealerships affected, and with the loss could be between $4 billion and $16 billion in sales. So to help us with this conversation, we're lucky to have an honored guest, Greg Kutzbach, forensic engineer. Hi, Greg.
Hey.
So first, can you tell the audience a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, of course. I'm a technical advisor at MR2 Solutions here in Irvine, California. My role is to assist companies in building solutions, making technologies that work for their business. I take projects that take dozens of weeks, get done in a month, under budget with transparency to the customer. And with my cyber background, it means I get to engineer security and privacy into every project that I do.
And Garrett, so before we get into the CDK global hack, can you tell the audience a little bit about Audit Tuesday and the purpose of these?
Yeah. So I'm going to put this in context, y'all, because there was something big I just read this morning. It was kind of upsetting. I just told Greg he gets as much, if not more, passion than me. There was a huge hack that came out a couple of months ago. That was the SolarWinds. We did some great Audit Tuesdays on it. We had Peter Shavak on it. We had other gentlemen on it. And basically, we've been using Audit Tuesday to not only promote UATS, and of course, shameless there, but more importantly, to dialogue and to work with the cyber and the governance community on ways, of course, our product can help, but more relevantly, better practices and procedures that we in the industry can do to make ourselves more secure. And that's really going to be the theme of today, okay? This hack happened, and there's some really, really backwards ways that identity was being passed around, okay? And let's go in it. And we can use this forum, Audit Tuesday, for this. So that's what we're going to do today. And Nazia, can you post that link in the LinkedIn chat or so? There was an article that should upset anyone. That after the SolarWinds hack, the Presidential Committee said, hey, we got to investigate this and reveal what's happened to help and make us more secure. Well, guess what? That was stymied. And I'm not going to say why. I don't know why or whatever. But either the research was done and it wasn't all published, or the research was never done because it would reveal parties. So it's up to us. It's up to us in the community to actually dialogue with each other. And no, I'm not going to, say, everything we say here should be followed immediately and whatever. We are having a discussion with other learned people in the community to make us more safe. With that, let's take it away.
Perfect. So, Greg, can you give a little bit of background on the CDK global attack?
Sure. Just going to hit the public-facing version of this. So the attack started on June 18th, 2 a.m. June 19th, CDK, they say they're coming back up, but then they got attacked again. They said they got their phones and their digital retail system backed up, but then they called it a second incident. I don't exactly know what one-day span they call it a second incident, but that's what they called it. They ended back up by June 21st, then by the end of the month, and then roughly they're back up by around the 4th of July, thereabouts. And then the dealers are now in the process of implementing their new SSO systems into the 15,000 dealers. So it's this phased-in approach of trying to undo, a decade or two of tech debt and catch up. So the attack and the aftermath at a very high level. Well, we're going to dig into it.
Yeah, and Greg, I like what you said, 15 years of tech debt, and that's what we're going to get into, because there's something that us people who create new solutions, all this, kind of get tired of hearing the industry say, well, I'm comfortable the way I'm doing things. Well, maybe you shouldn't be, right, Greg?
Keep going. I mean, what is comfortable? We have to be changing and evolving. And that means constantly training. We have Karina in the comment section over there, and she just got done teaching a whole bunch of classes with UATest. Anyone who wanted to learn.
Karina Clever is
so learn.
And Karina gets this community thing more than anyone else. I mean, she's always dialoguing, always conversing, always running seminars. I have my employees go listen to Karina's sessions on GRC as well. Keep going.
Yeah.
And Greg, can you give a little bit more information as to what we know what the hackers did to penetrate CDK Global?
Sure. Okay, so initial access was phishing. So they gained credentials and they dropped malware into the CDK network. Step one. And actually, let me just go a little bit to the side about who this is. This is a Black Suit ransomware, launched by which is a rebrand of the Royal ransomware operation, which is a rebrand of Conti. So so these are the same people over and over again that have done some really big stuff. Royal has attacked at least 350 organizations since 2022 with over $275 million in ransomware demands. Okay, so you got phishing to start with. Phishing equals credentials, just a identity. So let's start with that. Once they got the initial access, then they laterally moved throughout the CDK network, dumping credentials and exploiting weak permissions, which allowed you to lateral move and gain access to sensitive data. Then you gain access to even more critical systems by more increasing in privileges. Most likely through, this is again hearsay, but most likely through exploiting vulnerabilities within the CDK network and through weak configurations in order to move through. Because again, if you had strong configurations, it'd either block you or detect you, one of those. And then from there, it was ransomware, encrypting files, and then demanding ransom for the encryption keys. We're going to get into the VPN piece in a second. I haven't touched on the dealer side yet. This is all within the CDK network for this piece of the conversation. But I also want to mention that that as CDK goes down and everything starts being told, and CDK sends an email, just an email out to the dealers saying that we have a problem. I have the exact quote here somewhere. The ransomware operators are now social engineering over to the dealerships saying, "Hi, this is CDK Global. We would need XYZ," and they're phishing the dealers as CDK Global members in order to get additional access directly into the dealers. So beyond our core identities here, we have secondary attacks and tertiary attacks. So so that's that. But I can't wait to dive into the VPN part with Garrett, because he's kind of a zero trust nerd to the extreme. And,
guilty as charged. Love it.
And that's going to play a big part in this conversation.
Yeah.
So, Greg, the hackers used legacy identities and legacy identity authentication mechanisms to hack into CDK Global.
Yeah, it looks like they used the phishing campaign to get identities into the CDK Global core network, and that was really the start. And then they pivoted out into the dealer networks. I guess I'll touch on the VPN. So the way this thing works is you have the CDK Global's software installed on the machines throughout the dealers, right? So you have 15,000 dealers, and then each of the dealers has a whole bunch of computers, and each of these computers has the CDK software installed on it. And the software is installed as a local administrator, which means they can do pretty much whatever they want on the computer. Okay. The dealers historically have not been top of the line when it comes to security. So local admin might have been significantly more admin depending on how much rights were granted. We're always about principle of least access around here, principle of least privilege. The program was not designed in that way. And then from there, it's probably even worse if they were given more global domain type access potentially. We don't know.
And let me just pause there, because in our industry, we always rag on healthcare. We just do. You know, healthcare is behind the times. Healthcare is legacy and all this. And here we just discovered, you know, all of us who aren't part of the dealership, and Greg and I actually had some great calls yesterday with people in the industry to kind of inform us on the impact of this stuff. Here's this multiple billion dollar industry that it's taken down and is using logon mechanisms that predate anything almost in the healthcare industry. So I just wanted to point that out, that it's these Like I said, as someone that comes up with new products and I can talk zero trust, AI, blah, 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 man, there's some blocking and tackling that still needs to be done. Keep going, Greg,
Oh,
on the mechanisms here. They're being used for logon.
yeah. So you have the local software installed on the computers, and that logs into the CDK SaaS platform. Now they don't just go to the SaaS platform over a regular connection like we log into Zoom or something. The CDK network requires that they have an always-on VPN access between the CDK network and the dealer network. So now the dealer network has the ability to basically have a virtual wire connected between the dealers and the CDK network. So if you want to, you can segregate this highly, or you don't. It really is up to each individual dealer to manage that properly, to manage their own firewalls and their own access control lists and their own network zones and everything like that. So once CDK is owned, we'll just call it owned. They say, hey dealers, disconnect your VPNs. All 15,000 dealers, please disconnect your VPNs. I hope that you know how to operate your firewall. I hope your IT people and your MSPs and everything are on top of it. And please do this ASAP. I don't know why they couldn't just do this centrally, but they said disconnect and please do not reconnect. Come on. Very disappointing from CDK not managing this centrally. So while this is all happening, and once you disconnect, and once you say we're not allowed to connect back in, there is additional vishing, calling CDK fake reps calling from the attackers, saying, "Hi, I'm from CDK. Please install this piece of software so that I can remotely troubleshoot," that sort of thing. Social engineering is very, very powerful, especially when people are in emergency mode. They want to get back to business. We can get a little bit more into the business impact in a few minutes, but let's just say that it significantly hindered the ability to sell cars, fix cars, sell car parts, deal with your supplier, your inventory, your logistics. Everything fell apart. And don't forget, when I say 15,000 dealers, as we had yesterday in our call, it also affected everyone downstream. Those are your downstream fix-it shops, your collision centers, your people that rely on many other industries rely on dealerships for parts and for work to come their way and to have trucks come and go with cars and supplies and everything else. Everything goes through this program. So even though those downstream vendors don't directly interface with this program, the fact that dealers are down means that they are one of the nexuses in the supply chain that has to do with dealerships, and it all goes down. So that means that social engineering attacks and everything can go downstream because everyone is slamming and punching the door saying, let me do business, you're hurting my revenue. I'll dive into more in a minute, but that's plenty.
Before we move on, Ashley. So basically what we're seeing is an industry, was happy as a clam, blah, blah, blah. We got this 1980s whole mechanism out there. You got, legacy PCs that we all know have more malware than you can shake a stick at. And then what we're going to do is have them run admin privileges, do a connected VPN, and voila, we're good. And I'm like, when I learned about all this, I was like, all right, we got to talk to people. We got to, we don't need to, this is not an AI problem. This is stuff that was solved, in the beginning of the 2000s by people like me and Ashley when we created SecureAuth, with IAMs and single sign-on and identifiable accounts, rather than one account getting in and having full access across. So we will running a couple of demos and on that, just to help people understand that using modern IAM, there's a reason for it. The reason is it designates and authenticates and thus authorizes a user for a particular task. And that was the whole purpose of SAML and single sign-on and all this, was to say, okay, dealers, you own an account. You actually know who this user is. I want to authenticate you, and then I'll use that identity and move it along, and I'll restrict the privileges of that identity. Restrict's important. The most important thing going forward, 2024, it's no longer authentication. It's actually, we know who the user is often, but if we can restrict its access, we can become more secure. And I think as we get further out, and this goes under speculation, but we'll probably find out, as we found out 100% in SolarWinds, was that there was not, the principle of least privilege was not being practiced in SolarWinds, and the SEC cited them. So to hell with me, the SEC cited them for that. I think what was discovered as this access system that was being used allowed overprivileged and thus dangerous overprivileged lateral motion and the damage that could be done. Okay, so that's what my theme is harping on this, and I appreciate Greg for doing the research and coming up with it, is that legacy methods of identity are certainly not helping them in the authentication and the authorization process here.
And actually, for legacy, I just want to bring up one key important feature of identification is centralized identification. So having user accounts that are in this system, and this system, and this system, and this system, it means that when there is an incident and you need to do something like, okay, everyone, we need to reset passwords for everyone because we've been breached, something of that nature, that could be a single line in your incident response plan. But if you don't have the mechanism to do that, automation and tools and tested tooling, that might be a multi-day process. But if you do have the tooling, it's very quick. If it's all centralized, you can see what users are logging into what applications and what access they have, and if access has been increased. If someone used to not be able to access the accounting and now they are able to access the accounting, especially during an incident, and you have incident responders that are watching for this, then that means that we now know where the attackers are in the network and you can stop them.
Wow, that's good.
Karina brought up another big piece of role-based
You're
access.
better man I totally agree. What's her question, Greg?
Well, she was just bringing up the point of role-based access control, RBAC.
Right. How can you be role-based access control, Greg, and Karina, of course? How can you have role-based access control if you're using a single account for logging in? Wow.
And don't forget, it's a single account times however many applications you have. So a single user might have a dozen different applications they log into. And there's how do you do role based on that? A bunch of Excel sheets? I mean, like, it's horrible. It's unmanageable, especially when you're talking about large organizations.
Yes, NIST CSF 1.1 PRAC-6 principle of least privilege, and that it's modified and carried over for NIST CSF 2.0. Okay. Anyways, keep going there, Ashley.
Okay, so Garrett mentioned SSO. So Greg, are these more secure than the password stuffing that the car dealers were doing to get access to CDK Global App?
Absolutely. So a username and a password generally has almost no governance on top of it, no protection on top of it. When you're using a modern SSO, that's your Intra ID, your Oktas, your modern identity providers. You can be saying, okay, are you coming from the right IP? Does the device that you're logging in from have proper security software on it? Is it part of the domain? All these rules can go along with it. You could have MFA layered on top of it. Anything from a smart card to a YubiKey to an app on your phone with an authenticator to a million other things. But it makes it so you're not just a username and a password anymore. So. Sorry, a little long-winded. Yes, absolutely.
So, Greg, there's more to identity security than just setting up a tool like Okta and Intra ID. So these identities should be attested to on a regular basis to ensure that these are not ghost accounts and accounts are overprivileged, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So you in a large organization, you're going to have turnover. You're going to hire and fire people. You need to make sure that that they are enabled into the system in a systematic way, so you know what accounts they have access to and what roles, to Karina's point, love our back, are given to these users. You have people that move around in the organization. They used to be in sales, and now they're in management. They used to be a service tech, and now they're a service manager. And now they're a service VP, something of that nature. These all have different roles. And these need to be attested to. If you file a ticket with IT saying, hey, can you give Dave more privilege over to the sales data? Where is that in the long-term records? How are you making sure that Dave's old privileges are removed and his new privileges are given? And again, to the word that that Garrett said, overprivileged. We have to make sure that people are not overprivileged over time, especially if you have the employee that you love that's been there for 15 years. God knows how many departments they've moved through, and they might be massively overprivileged. And if an attacker gets that account, you know, good for them. They have a very powerful account. So yes,
So-
you need to govern them on a regular basis as a standard business practice.
So Garrett, this is what you attest as, right? Attest to who has access to what?
Yeah, and that's what we are. Is we're a big fan of the federated system. Of the federated systems, basically saying, hey, own your identities, and then then you'll have a better idea who not only have access to your applications internally, but who has access to your applications outside your system, right? As Greg said, in cases like this, you have multiples. You have one account having access to multiple applications, and it's a nightmare to understand then where who has the access and how do we control. Whereas what we're saying with the way we believe in is we believe in the federated system. We believe in the systems of the Okta as we're actually going to do a demo of showing working with the Microsoft product. It used to be called Azure AD, now Entra ID, but we don't care. It could be Jump Cloud, it could be Ping, it could be your LDAP or whatever. But you have your identities, right? Regularly attest to who has access. Okay, why? Because you're having, you've got, moves, leaves, changes, all that. Your users move around, and you got to make sure that you don't have faulty users in those systems. But by managing that and managing the principle of least privilege, then and using tools that have allowed the federation of systems, and almost all applications have a federation. We looked it up. CDK Global supports SAML. So I'm not sure if that's for all their tools or whatever, but there's a if you look it up, there's a one logon integration with them. So what we're going to be showing and discussing here is a better way to do identity and identity federation is available for most of your tools. And this is where Greg and I were talking beforehand. And then maybe what we have to do is start having people push harder at the vendors, saying, hey, we got a bunch of CISOs out there. I talk to you guys all the time. You know what security is. Say, the legacy systems are not at the level of support they need to be to stop these modern threats. So the answer is actually yes. Yes, this is what UAttest does. It does help you attest to what the users have privilege to, and it works best with the systems that are actually in the modern topography and the modern architecture that allow you to attest. So rather than me just babble, Kashif, why don't you show what a single sign-on a product looks like, and we'll start with the big guys. We'll just do a Microsoft, but this stuff, start with the Entra ID, just show people how SSO usually works. And then, we'll go into how we can attest to roles in those and then other tools.
Absolutely.
And I just want to touch on just one quick important thing in terms of SSO and just general terms. So we were talking pre-meeting about managing third-party risks. You can only do so much. So CDK Global is a publicly traded company. They're enormous. You're not going to be able to influence their internal practices all that much. They're going to do what they do, and the best that these dealerships can do is the best they can do. And so the best that they can do in terms of identity is controlling access into who can access it, from what computers, in what way, with what security requirements inside their own networks. So that's the reason why the SSO piece here is so important, is because it's basically the best, one of the core elements of being able to do the best that you can do with your own environment, being that you can't affect the upstream provider all that much.
Good point.
Right. Thanks, Greg. Can you hear me all right before I start, Garrett?
We hear you fine.
Got it. So before going into what UAttest does, to Greg's point and what Garrett just mentioned about the identities and different identities having multiple access into multiple applications and resources within the system, it all starts from here, from your IAM, the modern technology, the modern platforms that give you these features and this capability, where you can have multiple different resources, multiple different applications that you can give access to your users that are also part of this platform, this Entra ID or Okta's or any other IAM platform that you're using. So that's a centralized place where you can assign these privileges to the users to have access to certain applications or certain groups that they should be part of. So that's where it starts. And then when we talk about SSO, it comes into UAttest, it gets integrated with your IAMs, with these platforms, to enable these single sign-ons so that you can get away from using, these email IDs and passwords for all these different applications and resources you have access to. So instead of that, just go into your platform, any platform you're using, just use your SSO connection, use your organizational credentials, and get into any assigned application or resource that you have been given access to. That's what UAttest uses. We use OIDC, we also use secure SAML connectors, and when this SSO is enabled, nobody can get into any system or any resource without those credentials, under that SSO, under SAML. It will require certificate. It will require these connections to establish before they could give access to any user ID in there. So having said that, what it enables you to do when it comes to the audit and getting, to see who has access to what, and if anyone is having excessive privileges into the system, UAttest provides you this integration using SAML connector into your IAM platform, and then you can simply tell the tool, well, okay, here is my audit. I just want to see who has access to XYZ application or ABC group, and show me what kind of privileges are they enjoying today. All you have to do, just select your API source, which is your Entra ID in this case, give it a name according to the relevance, maybe the application name you're targeting, and then the most important thing is the time frame. You would allow your reviewers to go into that audit and see what's wrong with it. If somebody has got excessive privileges, you need to recommend to revoke those privileges because that person has either moved departments or left the organization, or maybe he has too much privileges into the account that he shouldn't have. So once you do that, it's going to, since the integration and the SSO is in place, it's going to show you how many applications are there, how many resources are there that people can have access to through this platform. So you can target a single or multiple applications as your target, and once you click done, it's going to fetch all the users who will have access to this particular application within your platform and show it to you in this format. So here's your targeted app, for example. It could be a group in case of group audit. This is your user. So certain profile attributes it will fetch from your IAM, your Entra ID in this case. The email ID is there. We use it as a unique identifier because it will be used to grant access to this user into various other applications or resources. So that's a unique identifier we're using in here. And then it gives you the information about who is the supervisor, who's the manager who's managing this user ID. And then bunch of other details like, when was the password change? It's been like 40 days, 30 days, 45 days, whatever is the benchmark. What was the last login date? What's the title of this user within the organization? What's the role? That's the most important thing. What's the role of this user within the organization? What can he do if he has access to this resource, right? And then user status, active or inactive. So once you have this information, it's easier for any admin to either recommend himself what he wants to do with these IDs by either certifying or saying, well, I would like to revoke this access, or better way is to use auto delegate functionality to either assign it to their direct line managers or to their application or group owners for them to decide and recommend what should be done with this identity, right? So it's easier when you do it automatically with either selecting the direct line manager or the application or group owner. And then it's just clicking through the GUI, it will start pushing out notifications to these individuals that you have chosen. It could be the managers, could be the application owners. And what they see, if I switch my role and I become a manager, I'll see this in my inbox, right? So it's all automated. You get a notification from your admin along with the link to the audit, which when they click on, it will take them right into that particular audit for that application. And I will only see the people who report to me today. So instead of, to be able to see everything that an admin can see, I'll only see a subset of those users. These are the two people who report to me and I'm responsible for them. So I can easily go ahead and recommend what to do with these identities. So for this one here, I've been working with this guy and I'm fine with his access. So I'll recommend to certify in this case, which appears under the reviewer's action column that I have recommended to certify this person, this identity. Last reviewed by, my name, email comes up. Last reviewed on, the timestamp comes up. So everything is being tracked. And then this person here, maybe he has left the organization, in which case I'll revoke his access, or he has moved departments, maybe 3 different departments in 3 years. So who knows? Now, in this case, I can further delegate this person out to the right manager if I know that person, instead of pushing it back to the admin. So I can redelegate to the right person, or in case he has left the organization, I'll recommend to revoke. That's all I have to do as a manager, right? And then when I go back to the admin side of things, I'll see upon refresh, I'll see the progress. One of the managers has completed the task by recommending what to do with these identities, and the others, I mean, we have automated emailing and notification system that, as long as it's pending, they'll keep on getting these notifications until they complete the task. So NAG email part has also been covered in those email templates and notifications. So just for the sake of this demo, I'll just go ahead and, since I'm the admin, I can do anything I want. I'll certify or recommend to certify these just to show you what it looks like when it's at 100%. Now, here comes the best part. Now you have completed the audit. The admin, instead of writing a bunch of emails to different people within the organization to execute these recommendations, I will just go back to my listings page. I'll complete this audit so that nobody can make any changes to it after it's been recommended by the reviewers. All the recommendations are there, and now it will give me an option to execute. So if you are using Okta, if you're using Entra ID, if you're using Jump Cloud or any IAM Ping one, it will give you, UATest will give you the option to execute these revocations onto that platform to an extent where you can either suspend or deactivate that user ID from getting access to that particular resource. So once you confirm, the execution will take place in your IAMs, and that person or that ID will no longer have access to that particular resource. Now, coming to the point where if somebody's trying to get access to certain resources or certain groups, and you don't know until it happens, right? we have a mechanism we have built into this product by the name triggers. You can activate those triggers so that you know what exactly is happening when it's happening. Say if somebody's trying to get access to a group and you have applied these triggers into the product and somebody's making changes into your Entra ID, you will get notified and it will create an audit out of that change, out of that event, and then let you decide whether that person should get access to this particular group or should there be any changes allowed in a user profile, right? So if somebody is trying to change his profile and adding a bunch of roles and privileges into the profile, you can set it up in these triggers over here, and when it happens, you will be the first one to know, or anyone who you appoint here. So let's say there are group events. If a user is added to a group, then you add another condition. If a user is removed from a group, anything of this sort happens, just let me know, or create a campaign and assign it to a certain person within the organization. It could be a user's manager, it could be like an Azure group or Azure user. It will be, sent out to that person, and that person will receive the audit campaign created by this trigger under event audits. So once that event happens, it's not only that it's sending you the notification, it is creating an audit out of that change and letting somebody know and asking them to review it and allow it or disapprove that. So you can stop it right there. Anybody who is trying to get access into a group or into the system, if that trigger is in place, you'll be the first one to know and you'll be the one to stop it right there. At the end, the final thing is the report. So once you have done this, you can have the report both in form of a PDF or a CSV format, and it will have all the details that you've been looking on the screen in form of a user profile, the action taken, the timestamp. Everything will be covered in that report in PDF and CSV formats. So Garrett, does that make it?
Love it. No. And what it did is a higher level. Is so if we get our identity and our identity platforms up to the modern levels, there's all these. I'm doing this whole other webinar with this other group, that Ascents.io. There's all this level of security and compliance and automation is the word I was looking for. An automation we can bring, right? And that's what Greg and I were talking even before the meeting and during is by embracing the modern tools and modern mechanisms, we can address a lot of these problems. I'm not saying it's all solved. I mean, there's still hacks in the IAMs, but at least we know who we're given access to, and we can review who we're access to, and then can revoke and condense and confine the access they are given. Take it away, Ashley.
So, Greg, this type of access review, it's not only recommended on a regular basis, but it should also be done after a breach or some other type of attack, right?
Oh, you're on mute, Greg.
Thank you very much. Identity is one of the top methods of infiltrating a company. Last year, it was the top across all 18 industry verticals identified by Scientia Institute. But this year, it fell number 2 behind vulnerable software. Still, top 2 is you need to protect against it. So identity can be abused by phishing, credential theft, not to mention password reuse, as shown as passwords in the dark web, or through privileged users. So yes, identity access review regularly should be part of your standard business practices. And I just like to also highlight, because of password reuse, that dark web scanning should also be part of this, as your third-party vendors, your contractors, and your employees all can have the password reuse from, let's say, your friendly neighborhood 5K race also being used in your corporate network. So identity is something that needs to be protected in every single way, constantly.
So, Garrett, UATest has a name for this, right?
Yeah, we call it an identity pen test. And that is, after an incident, something like this, hey, now we know that we should be reviewing all of our users. And we even created a 1 month license for this. We just turn it on, then you get a professional as yourself who can train you or help you with understanding your things, someone like Greg and his team to help you run this and then do a review of your users to ensure that the privileges haven't changed. Because as Greg can tell you, cyber kill chain. What's the fourth step of the cyber kill chain? Escalate your privileges, right? So then you can say, hey, I got a hold of this user. Now I made him admin and he's rocking and rolling. He's laterally moving around the enterprise. He's exfiltrating, he's encrypting, all that. So what we're saying is do an identity pen test after the breach. After the breach, take a look at what your permissions are, and then get back under control.
Greg, can you talk a little bit more about running an identity pen test with UATest?
Sure. So automation, I'm going to use the word again, is the way to go. So it's more than just, so basically the question is, who should have access to what? What are the different roles that need to be assigned? What does it mean to be a sales manager? What's it mean to be a parts manager, what do you call it, a clerk, anything like that? Identifying roles, seeing who should be a part of those roles. Well, who's to say? Is it HR? Is it the manager? Well, you assign people to managers, you assign people to speak to them, and that way they can attest the name. They can attest to who should be a member of what roles, who shouldn't. And so basically, the tech person like myself, who would be running the identity pen test, is not actually doing most of the logic. The logic is done by the business, and we're simply the ringleader helping it along, connecting into the different systems. You connect into Microsoft Entra ID or Okta, and you basically see all these different SSO applications that are all connected to see who should have access into what applications and within the native environment like Azure or M365. Now, if you have a application that is not SSO'd, then I would reach in and go export a CSV file, a Excel file basically, and bring that into UATest, and now you have visibility into a system that's essentially disconnected. Again, for a company that might be a dozen or 2 dozen or 3 dozen disconnected systems if they are not modern, which makes the engagement take a lot more time, effort, money, and money. It's more costly to pay for a lot more consulting hours. And internally to the company, don't forget, you have to pay all those employees to help you all that lift too. So by the end, where you're going to say, man, I wish I would have connected all my applications in a long time ago, because individually having little data silos all over the place is a big pain. But yeah, long story short, the technical person, the consultant, comes in and basically ringleads, and decision making is happening at the company level. HR, department managers, get them to sign off on it. And it's all done through an automated web interface where it's not having to be done through Excel sheets and manual interviews. It's you shoot out an email, they go through it, they click yes, 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 no, 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 and then that allows us to revoke and add privileges as appropriate. It's very streamlined.
As they say in politics, is the same for IT and IT security. Never let a good crisis go to waste. Right? So it's a good time to review your identities.
Perfect. Let's go to some questions.
Yeah, and this is where we even take questions that we might have, answered in the middle, but let's flush them out here a little bit. So take it away, Ashley.
Okay, so first question is for Greg. So in speaking about third-party risk, isn't the CDK incident a call to strengthening your own business continuity and resilience?
Absolutely. I love the word resilience. It goes to show, I'm a big believer in assume breach. I assume that at some point something's going to happen, and you just need to minimize the damage that's going to happen because of that. You need to isolate, contain, keep it nice and small instead of, there's a reason why in skyscrapers they have fire doors per floor, so that way you don't lose the whole skyscraper, you lose the floor. So the same thing, you manage your risk. So risk assessments going through from a very basic level, like a CIS 18 control assessment, that it's not a very comprehensive way, but if you aren't used to having any visibility into a holistic look at your environment, then that's a good starting point. It's easy to learn. You can learn it in a couple of hours, and then your existing IT staff can use that as a basic framework. Then as you get a little bit more mature, you look at overall risks. You say, what happens if our primary governance system to our business, like the CDK, goes down? Can we go to paper? What happens if if we have a power outage? Does that what's our procedure? Well, just basically, what are the risks that can happen, and what's the outcome? And you just map them out. I love risk assessments because it allows you to role play and actually protect your business, which always comes in cybersecurity of, why am I spending all this money? Is the thing that executives say all the time. What am I getting for it? Well, I think that risk assessments show value because it allows you to really see what can really happen and what are all of these trained professionals getting paid for. And that's to allow you to continue to do business. And if we're really good at our job, allow you to do business even better and enable you to have higher productivity and actually be better. It's a tough one to do in security because usually we're just protecting, but if we're really good at our jobs, and that's my job, is to make it so that the CFOs and the CEOs love us as much as the chief risk officers and the CIOs and CISOs.
Perfect. So, Greg, can you tell the audience how they can reach you?
Yeah, easy email.
Oh,
Greg.
Actually, there's a question about zero trust I wanted to take.
Oh, sure. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
So Garrett, what does zero trust have to do with this hack and others like it?
Yeah. Okay. So I do love it when they call me zero trust nerd because I love it. So we did this webinar with a gentleman from the CISA, in the U.S. Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, and to do so, I had to research the way they dialogue zero trust, and lots of ways to dialogue zero trust. I use the CISA model. Basically, they say we're being hacked because we are really running at the traditional level. Traditional level means, things are not automated. We're using legacy systems. They're not communicating, etc. Okay. Let's take that model and apply it to governance. Okay. This is what it basically says. Okay. This is how we are working. And nothing was better. And that's why we fleshed this out. And it was good that Greg fleshed out how they're currently doing it. It's in the governance world, it's very manual, and in fact, there's no way not to do it manual because you're not using components like your single sign-on systems. The initial step of zero trust to take the solution would be to bring in things like IAM, an IAM system where you can quantify users and quantify for your enterprise who has access and who has access now. And at one touch of the button, you would be able to see who they had access, and you can revocate them, etc. Okay. Then you can use something like zero trust, and what you attest, and the way Kashif showed, you can go through your systems and easily attest to it. The advance in this, where we move up the scale with you attest and the other systems, is you have things like those triggers that in real time tell you when something changes. In addition, you bring in intelligence. That's code word for AI, which gives you a risk score of saying what is going on in your system. And then ultimately, and this is my own soapbox, I believe, no vendor is optimal. What we are is when we start passing our trust scores to each other, and then other tools start using it. In this case, it would have been kind of cool if you had an IAM system set up the dealers, and then a user gets compromised. Our system has a trust score, and then we can pass it on to other systems like CDK Global, etc. That's where we want to all be. So, love zero trust, love the message, and wanted to use it to how it would apply to a use case scenario like this. But we can talk more.
I just want to beef up on that automation piece. Just 2 seconds. Is that a recent presentation from CrowdStrike said that the time from initial access to attack is sitting around 48 hours. That means that from the attacker's initially getting the identity and logging into your system to the time that you're ransomware or the actual execution stage of the attack happens is about 2 days. That means quarterly risk assessments and quarterly reviews just don't cut the mustard. So that means that you need to not only have protections, that's your EDR agents and your firewalls and things like that. You also need to have your detection agents, that's your SIMs and your managed SOCs. That means someone's actually watching the dashboard, managed SOCs. And your various logs and alerting and information, such as from UATest, are flowing into somewhere and being looked at. So that's your detection piece. And then the last piece and the famous detect and respond, right? That's the big cybersecurity motto. You got to detect it, and then you got to do something about it. And if it happens in the middle of the night, that's T-8 hours or something that no one's watching the dashboards. If you have automation, then things are happening behind the scenes. And if it's not totally non-critical, then perhaps that machine that's now very, very suspicious, you get it isolated. You get it off the network. You disable that account. And yeah, you have a ticked off user in the morning or a computer that doesn't work or something, but you don't have a ransomware to wake up to in the morning. And that can be automated through things like SOAR, security automation response. And there's a lot of platforms to do that. And you have to have a lot of these different puzzle pieces, such as identity, such as zero trust, such as firewalls, such as alerting IDS systems set up so that they're actually feeding somewhere and do something with them. So I just want to really harp on that whole 48-hour thing. Things are not slowing; they're very fast.
And we will do a webinar someday just on triggers and how it's relevant when identities change. Like it. All right, Ash, I'll let you wrap up.
Perfect. So sorry about that. Greg, can you tell the audience how they can reach you?
Yeah, I work at MR2 Solutions out of Irvine, California. You should come down and have a coffee with me, first of all. But secondly, Greg at mr2solutions.com or www.mr2solutions.com.
Perfect. And then we at UATest can be reached at uatest.com or just write us at info@uatest.com. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
All the best. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kashif. All the best.
Thank you.
Of course, Ashley. All the best.
Thank you.